this is Chris Haddock from the Veterans Law Blog coming to you today to talk to you about effective dates. Now remember, there are 4 pillars in any VA service connection claim that I talk about on the Veterans Law Blog all the time. Pillar 1 is, are you eligible? Pillar 2 is, can you prove service connection? Pillar 3 is, what is your impairment rating? And Pillar 4 is effective dates. We're going to talk about effective dates coming up in just a minute. Hey, welcome back. We're here to talk to you about effective dates. And really, the bottom line, these things are hugely important because they are the critical component to determining how much the VA will pay you each month and how much past due, or what some veterans call back pay, is due and owing to you in your VA claim. So listen, an effective date, the general rule of effective date is really straightforward and simple, but I will tell you, as with all things, that you get into this effective date issue and it's way, way, way more complicated. There are so many effective date rules out there that nobody can possibly recite them all in even just a short video. So I'm just going to hit some of the big ones here and tell you all about them. I'm going to tell you about 3 or 4 of the big ones here. But if you want to learn more about effective dates, if you're a member or a subscriber to the Veterans Law Blog, you automatically get access to our How to Prove Service Connection video. It's a huge 5-hour long video, and lesson 18 is 25 minutes talking about effective dates. And you should come out of that knowing more than many VSOs, more than many veterans, and frankly more than a lot of attorneys that have been doing this work know about effective dates. So check that video out. But let's talk about the 3 major rules. So the first one is the general rule of effective dates, and that general rule says that your effective date is the later of the date that, the later of the date that you filed a claim. Sorry, I'm confused myself. Look at that. Bonk. Anyway, later of the date that you filed a claim and the date that the entitlement arose. Now, I'm not going to go into what that language means, the date the entitlement arose, because it's a huge, huge issue within the VA, but generally speaking, what happens almost all the time is the date that you filed your claim, or really the date that the VA stamped it received, is the date that you're going to use as your effective date. Now, some folks will file a notice of intent to file a claim after March of 2015. There's a specific form that you can use to file a notice of intent to file a claim. In fact, you must use that form. And if you do that and perfect your claim within a year and continuously pursue any appeals, then that date of the notice of intent to file a claim will be your effective date. So what happens if you file a claim for service connection within 1 year of leaving military service? Well, if you prove that you're entitled to service connection, your effective date goes back to the day after you left military service, right? So that way you have a seamless gap in coverage in terms of pay all the way up until discharge, and then your disability compensation would kick in then. But you have to raise that claim either through a notice of intent to file after March of 2015 or a formal claim on VA Form 21-526 within 1 year of separation from service. Another effective date rule that is out there is currently being litigated all over the place at the Veterans Court and the Federal Circuit, and it involves those pre-March of 2015 situations where a veteran did have an informal claim or had a formal claim, and the question is, what was included in the scope of it? So if you have any of those issues pre-March of 2015, I strongly encourage you to contact an attorney that works at the Veterans Court and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, because those issues are pretty important, can lead to some pretty big precedent, and the law is rapidly, well, I would say changing, but it's really firming up in a very pro-veteran way at this point. So that's another effective date scenario, and generally for those pre-March of 2015, your effective date is the original claim date if your claim is open and pending without an adjudication from the date of that claim. And so that's a pretty significant effective date rule. Another effective date rule is in 38 CFR 3.156C, and that says that if you, under the old legacy system, if you reopen a claim with new and material service records, or new and relevant service records, then you get the original effective date of your original claim. So that's a pretty powerful, very powerful effective date rule. And in fact, what the meaning of the word relevant to that is currently being litigated at the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. That case was actually at the Supreme Court in 2018 and 2019, and they were looking at that. So it's one of the handful of cases that made it up to the Supreme Court. That's how important these effective date rules are. If you are a Vietnam era veteran exposed to Agent Orange in the Republic of Vietnam, or within 12 nautical miles of the coastline of the Republic of Vietnam, and you're entitled to that presumption of exposure to Agent Orange. At that point, you're also going to be entitled to the effective date rules of the Niemer stipulations. They're way too complicated to get into here. You can find all that stuff on the Veterans Law blog if you'd like, but just know that veterans who are exposed to Agent Orange in the Republic of Vietnam are entitled to earlier effective date rules that are special and unique and different and sometimes very powerful. So right now, if you are a Korean War veteran or Korean DMZ veteran, or if you served in Thailand during the Vietnam War, you're not necessarily under the law as it's written right now. The courts are saying you're not entitled to that. Our firm is challenging that. I'm not sure whether we'll be successful or not, but we're challenging that to include it. And there's also, of course, legislation pending in Congress that will help those Thailand and Korean DMZ vets. So listen, I want you to take a look at this video that's coming up right here. I want to talk to you about the Appeals Modernization Process, or the AMA, because in this AMA is a really important concept that affects effective dates, known as continuously pursuing your claim.